I attempted to whip up a homemade pasta dish with a creamy sauce, hoping to treat everyone to a delightful meal. Please savor it while it's still warm, I urged as I served the plates. However, as the dish reached the table, an unpleasant odor wafted from it, immediately dampening my enthusiasm. Hesitant, I paused before taking the bite. Aren't you going to eat it? Don't you like my cooking? Holly's accusatory tone caught me off guard, her eyes fixed on me as if daring me to criticize. Caught in her unexpected scrutiny, I felt the pressure mounting, but rather than confront her, I discreetly switched my plate with my son Aiden's, hoping to spare him from whatever foul concoction lay before us. As Aiden eagerly dug in, my heart raced with apprehension, yet to my horror, he soon began to foam at the mouth and collapse, sending panic rippling through the room. As Holly feigned confusion, I saw through her facade. Anger simmered within me at her malicious intent. Determined to retaliate, I silently vowed to expose her deceit. My name is Susan, and at 62, life had settled into a quiet routine with my husband after Aiden's marriage. But when Aiden confided in me about his wife's cooking, I initially brushed it off, chastising him for his ingratitude. Yet his unusual reluctance to eat piqued my curiosity, so I extended an invitation for dinner, hoping to bridge the gap with Holly and foster a harmonious relationship. Little did I anticipate the audacity of Holly's actions. When they joined us for dinner, the evening unfolded without incident, leaving me to ponder the unsettling events that had transpired. I hope it suits your taste, Holly, I ventured as she sampled the dish I had prepared. It's delicious, she replied, her expression lighting up with satisfaction. Grateful for her approval, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride at her compliment. I'm glad, thank you, I responded with a smile. Holly continued, expressing her admiration for Aiden's fond memories of my cooking. Her words made me blush with embarrassment and pride all at once. And I'd also made a dish for you as a gift, Holly announced, placing a large container in the center of the dining table. Curiosity piqued, I inquired about the contents. Holly, what on earth did you make for us? It's a French dish called quiche. Don't you know it? She replied confidently, opening the container to reveal its contents. However, what greeted us was far from appetizing. The burnt surface and the gooey, undercooked interior emitted a foul odor that made me involuntarily grimace. You just mix the dough and bake it so it's easy to make, Holly explained, seemingly unfazed by our reactions. Despite my reservations, I timidly picked up my chopsticks to give it a try. But the undercooked dough made me hesitate, and even my husband refrained from taking a bite. Seeing our reluctance, Holly's insistence wavered. Mother-in-law, aren't you eating it? She questioned, her tone strained. I'm sorry, but I feel like it's a bit undercooked. Can we go ahead and reheat it? I suggested gently, hoping to avoid any offense. Holly's reaction was palpable as she frowned at my critique. Never mind, she muttered, slamming the container onto the table with a hint of frustration. I didn't think I'd be treated like this just for burning a dish. Do you think you can do anything just because you're good at cooking? Holly's frustration simmered as she confronted me. Holly, calm down before you complain to Mom. Don't you think you should try it yourself? I interjected, trying to diffuse the tension. It's easy to make, so I don't need to taste it, Holly retorted, her tone defensive. But why aren't you eating it either? How can you serve food to people without tasting it yourself? Just try it, I urged, realizing my unintentional rudeness. Attempting to mediate, I sought to calm their escalating argument, but Holly remained indignant, her laughter edged with bitterness. Aiden, sensing the tension, apologized and followed her out of the room, leaving me feeling overwhelmed in the silence that followed. At this rate, she'll think I'm giving her a hard time, I lamented to my husband, contemplating the leftover container before us. I'm not cocky about being a good cook. I'm just average, I confess, my concern growing about finding a peaceful resolution. We debated whether to intervene further, ultimately deciding to maintain a distance and let them manage their household affairs. Yet despite our efforts to stay out of it, Holly's visits to her house increased inexplicably. Mother-in-law, will you please make lunch and put dinner for Aiden in a container to take home? Holly's sudden request caught me off guard, her presence unaccompanied by Aiden. Surprised by her abrupt visit, I found myself faced with empty containers, tasked with catering to her demands once again. I approached Holly, sensing a shift in her behavior. Is everything all right? Aiden seems to prefer your cooking, so I thought I'd ask you to make our meals from now on, she stated matter-of-factly. That's a problem, Holly. Why don't we cook together? I suggested, hoping to foster a sense of camaraderie. But her response was swift and dismissive. No, you're just going to make that disgusted face again. You're just giving me a hard time. Her words left me speechless, the divide between us growing wider with each passing moment. Despite my attempts to explain, she seemed resolute in her belief that I was a terrible mother-in-law. Though cooking wasn't a burden, the thought of preparing meals daily for a daughter-in-law who harbored such animosity was daunting. I considered offering to teach her some simple dishes, but she adamantly refused. You're good at cooking, so just make it for us. And please take care of tomorrow's meal, too, she demanded, her tone increasingly brazen. Despite my efforts to reason with her, she only became more obstinate. On days when I declined, she resorted to buying prepared food, causing tension between her and Aiden. Aiden was spoiled by you, wasn't he? He just gobbles up store-bought food, she complained, her frustration evident. He's always loved eating since he was young, I defended gently, trying to ease the tension. As the days passed, Holly's visits to her house became more frequent, relying on us for her meals and Aiden's dinner. Eventually, she insisted I make Aiden's lunch and deliver it in the morning, leaving me deeply troubled by the turn of events. I approached Aiden, expressing my concern about Holly's frequent visits. To my surprise, he began offering money for their meals to avoid her cooking altogether. If you're willing to spend that much, why not encourage Holly to learn to cook? I suggested, hoping for a compromise. But Holly refused, citing hurt feelings. As tensions mounted, another conflict erupted when Holly discovered Aiden's financial contributions toward our food expenses. Why are you paying your mother? Is this supposed to be an allowance? I didn't agree to this, Holly protested, her frustration palpable. It's because you're making my mom cook for us. What's wrong with paying for our food? Aiden retorted, trying to justify his actions. Despite our efforts to resolve the issue, Holly remained adamant, viewing our actions as a slight against her. No matter how much we tried to reason with her, Holly refused to listen, insisting that not eating her cooking constituted harassment. Feeling caught in the middle, I decided to step back from cooking for them, hoping it would bring some resolution, albeit temporary. However, Holly remained displeased, and I realized it was futile to continue intervening. Reluctantly, I urged them to resolve their differences on their own. Weeks later, on a calm afternoon, Holly visited again, but this time, Aiden was by her side. The unexpected sight left me on edge as I greeted them at the entrance, uncertain of what lay ahead. I want you to teach me how to cook. Holly finally agreed to listen to reason. Please, just this once, I implored, relieved that our discussion had led to a positive outcome. Together, we made our way to the kitchen, where Holly arrived with her own ingredients, displaying a newfound motivation. However, to my surprise, she insisted on working alone and promptly ushered me and Aiden out of the kitchen. Confused, we exchanged worried glances, but Holly remained firm in her decision. I can't concentrate if I'm not alone, she explained, refusing to entertain our assistance. As we anxiously waited, Holly called us back into the living room after just a few minutes. With a sense of anticipation, she served us pasta she had made in the kitchen. Though the pasta seemed hastily prepared, I hesitated to voice my concerns. But as I began to mix it with my fork, I noticed foreign objects in the cream sauce, remnants that resembled herbs but emitted an unusual scent reminiscent of air freshener. Aiden, however, seemed undeterred as he eagerly sampled the dish. It's delicious, he exclaimed with surprise, his enthusiasm palpable. Encouraged by his reaction, Holly beamed with pride. Wow, it's good. Holly, you've learned to make this kind of food, he praised, his words filled with admiration. I always cook properly. Look, even my mother-in-law. There's no way she wouldn't eat it, Holly asserted confidently. Mom, it's fine. It's just a normal pasta, Aiden reassured, though his comment would typically provoke Holly's fury. However, she appeared indifferent and urged me to eat quickly. Despite her insistence, the stronger the strange smell became as I mixed it, the more hesitant I felt. Why won't you eat it? Holly questioned, suspicion creeping into her voice. So, my mother-in-law just wanted to mess with me, right? That's not true. It's just that. I began, but was interrupted by Holly's ringing phone. She hastily excused herself from the table, leaving the room. Seizing the moment, I urged Aiden to secretly exchange the pasta. He complied, happily indulging in a second serving. But within moments, he recoiled and collapsed, foaming at the mouth. I couldn't contain my shock, letting out a scream. What happened? Why did Aiden collapse? I cried out. Hearing my distress, Holly rushed back into the room, her concern evident as she knelt by Aiden's side. As I dialed for an ambulance, Holly appeared bewildered and asked what had happened to Aiden. Once Aiden was rushed to the hospital and had his stomach pumped, my husband and I arrived, relieved to see him lying on the hospital bed. But before we could express our concern, Holly questioned Aiden about the incident, echoing her earlier confusion when he collapsed. Hey, why did Aiden collapse? How come? She demanded, her agitation palpable. Ollie, please calm down, my husband interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. But Holly's accusatory tone persisted. It should have been you. Did you force Aiden to eat it? What on earth are you talking about, Holly? What did you do? I pressed, bewildered by her accusations. Holly's response was shocking. You insulted my cooking, so I thought I'd get back at you, she admitted, her tone laced with bitterness. Get back at me, I exclaimed, incredulous. It's also my mother-in-law's fault that Aiden won't eat my cooking. Aiden has always been on her side. Though neither Aiden nor I intended to hurt her feelings, Holly remained steadfast in her accusations. That's why I thought everything would be peaceful if my mother-in-law wasn't around, she continued, unapologetic. It became evident that Holly had indeed tampered with the pasta she served me, as the white residue turned out to be detergent. Thankfully, no serious harm was done, but the situation could have been far worse. Though Aiden should have noticed the strong smell, I couldn't ignore Holly's reckless actions. If you're saying it would be better if I wasn't around, then all you needed to do was try harder at cooking, I retorted, exasperated by her lack of remorse. But if he were still alive, Aiden would always be on your side, wouldn't he? Holly countered, her unapologetic and unreflective attitude leaving me at a loss for words. Disappointed, I let out a heavy sigh, my shoulders slumping in defeat. Beside me, my husband shook his head in quiet dismay, realizing the extent of Holly's misguided actions. That's enough, Holly, I said firmly, attempting to rein in her childish rebuttal. I'd like to have a talk with your parents as well. Why? She protested, her confusion evident. Because talking to you won't get us anywhere, I explained, resolved to involve her parents in the discussion. After Aiden's safe recovery and discharge from the hospital, we convened a meeting with Holly's parents. Though Holly was initially resistant, I persisted, arranging the gathering and initiating the conversation. I deeply apologize for the tremendous trouble our daughter has caused you, Holly's mother, Kate, expressed remorsefully upon our meeting. Oh no, it's something my mother needs to apologize for, Holly interjected defensively. Kate's stern glare silenced her, prompting Holly to bow her head in contrition. Throughout the discussion, Kate's strict demeanor raised questions about Holly's behavior. We'll cover the medical expenses, and if there's anything else she can do to make amends, please let us know, Holly's father offered, attempting to rectify the situation. But Holly refused to relent. Stop it. I'm not paying any money, she protested defiantly. Turning to her, I asked the question that had been weighing on my mind. Holly, can you tell me why you did such a thing? At the hospital, I confronted Holly about her accusations. It's because Aiden only ever takes your side, she insisted, continuing to blame me for mocking her cooking and for the circumstances that led me to take over cooking duties. Unable to bear her attitude any longer, I revealed a certain photograph to Kate, her mother. What is this? Kate asked, visibly shaken as she examined the dish Holly had brought to our house, claiming it was a quiche. You served such a terrible thing to someone else, Kate scolded Holly harshly, her disappointment evident. With no defense left, Holly hung her head in silence as the lecture continued, leaving us no chance to intervene. Eventually, Holly admitted to everything, revealing her belief that if she could get me hospitalized, she wouldn't have to take care of me. The absurdity of her logic left me reeling. I'm sorry, but I can't continue our married life after being subjected to something like this, Aiden declared, his frustration evident. Why not? It's not my fault. You shouldn't have taken your mother's side, Holly retorted, her defiance crumbling under the weight of Aiden's words. You be quiet. You could be turned over to the police for this, I interjected, watching as Holly paled at the mention of the authorities. Though there was some trouble regarding compensation and hospital fees, Kate promised to make Holly pay, de-escalating the situation. Though Holly initially acted like a child, she seemed to reflect on her actions after Aiden broke up with her. Later, Anne discovered that Holly's parents, whom she claimed not to get along with, were actually professional chefs. Seemingly rebelling against their strict culinary standards, Holly had adopted unorthodox cooking methods after getting married. Learning of her parents' anger and the so-called bridal training she was undergoing, I realized the importance of teaching my son basic household chores. Aiden, appreciating the privilege of having someone cook for him, began making simple dishes on his own, sometimes joining me to cook meals together. Surprisingly, my husband also became interested in cooking, and the three of us now enjoy cooking together with occasional role reversals where they handle the cooking while I relax.